Not long ago, something wild happened. Intel, a company that, let's be honest, a lot of folks had kind of written off, well, their stocks suddenly jumped. A huge reason was this totally unexpected team up with their biggest rival, NVIDIA. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. It was a signal that something way, way bigger and more fundamental was shifting deep inside the company.
So, what is really going on here? I mean, why are these absolute titans, NVIDIA, cloud leaders like Alibaba, suddenly betting big on Intel's new vision for the data center? Let's dig in and unpack the story behind this pretty radical reinvention. Okay, so to really get where Intel is going, you first have to understand where they've been. We got to look back at this powerful, but as it turns out, deeply flawed philosophy that basically defined them for decades. For the longest time, Intel was the undisputed king. We're talking a staggering 99% of the server market. Think about that. Their whole strategy was super simple. Build one processor, the Xeon, and make it do everything for everyone. It was the ultimate Swiss Army knife of CPUs, designed to handle literally anything you could throw at it, from, running a tiny personal blog all the way up to a supercomputer simulating black holes. Yeah, but here's the problem. That one-size-fits-all Swiss Army knife just isn't cutting it anymore. The world changed. The demands on a modern data center have completely split apart, going in two totally opposite directions. So on one side, you've got cloud-native apps. That's thousands of tiny little tasks all running at the same time. For that, you need to cram as many cores onto a chip as you can and keep the power bill low, right? Efficiency is literally money. But then on the other side, you have the absolute monsters, AI and high-performance computing. These things need the most raw, single-core power you can imagine, huge amounts of memory, and honestly, cost isn't the main concern. You can't build one tool that does both of those jobs well. The Swiss Army knife was officially broken. So Intel's stuck, right? Faced with this huge dilemma, they did something that went against decades of their own history. They made a truly radical decision. It's pretty incredible. They took their most famous, their golden brand, Xeon, and they literally broke it in half. And out of that came the all-new Xeon 6 line. They finally realized, hey, you can't chop down a tree with a scalpel, and you definitely can't perform surgery with a giant axe. It was time to build specialized tools for specialized jobs. And this right here, this breaks down that new approach perfectly. The Xeon 6 now comes in two distinct flavors. First, you've got the E-core, E for efficiency. Think of this as the surgeon's scalpel. It's built for density, for efficiency. It's made to just slice and dice all those cloud-native workloads. And then you have the P-core, P for performance. And this is Thor's hammer. It is built for one thing and one thing only: pure, raw, unadulterated power to just smash through the toughest AI and HPC jobs out there. Now look, the E-core is a total game changer for cloud efficiency, and we could do a whole deep dive just on that. But for the rest of our time here, we're going to focus on Thor's hammer, the P-core, also known by its codename Granite Rapids. We're going to see what really makes this chip such an absolute monster. Okay, so to really get a grip on its power, we need to break it down into four key parts. First, we'll look at how it's built. That's the advanced packaging. Then we'll get into its brain, the massive core and cache. After that, its circulatory system, the high-speed I/O. And finally, we'll uncover the secret weapons hidden inside, the built-in accelerators. All right, first up, how these things are actually made. For years and years, Intel made what are called monolithic chips. That means one single, giant piece of silicon. The best way to think about it is like trying to bake one enormous, party-sized pizza. If there's one tiny flaw anywhere, a bubble in the crust, a burnt spot, the whole thing is ruined. It's incredibly hard and super expensive. The new way? It's all about chiplets. So instead of one giant pizza, you make a bunch of perfect individual slices, and then you assemble them. Your success rate goes way up, and your costs go way down. It's just a smarter way to build. And this whole chiplet approach is what lets Intel get absolutely crazy with the specs. I mean, we are talking up to 128 performance cores. That's double the last generation, a massive leap in how much work it can do at once. It's built on their brand new Intel 3 process, which is a huge manufacturing milestone for the company. And the cache, that's the super fast memory that sits right next to the cores for instant access, it's ballooned by 4.5 times to an incredible 514 megabytes. That is a massive reservoir of data, just sitting there, ready to go. But check this out. It's not just about the total amount of cache.
What really matters is how much each individual core gets to play with. And as you can see right here, while some competitors might try to cram in more cores, Intel is giving each one of its cores a much bigger slice of that cash pie. It's kind of like having fewer kids, but making sure each one is a super well-fed, powerful giant. And for jobs like databases, where you need to grab data instantly, this makes a world of difference. On top of all that, the Xeon 6 is one of the very first chips to fully support this new technology called CXL 2.0. The easiest way to think about it is like a universal superhighway inside the data center that can connect anything to anything else. But its real superpower? It lets you create these giant shared pools of memory. So if any server in the data center is running low, it can just borrow from this big pool. It's a total game changer for flexibility and cutting down on waste. So, okay, that's the hardware. Pretty impressive, right? But a powerful chip is just a fancy paperweight if you can't actually use all that power. And that's where this incredibly deep 15-year-long partnership between Intel and Alibaba Cloud comes into the picture.
And listen, this is not some new relationship that just popped up for convenience. As one of the experts from Alibaba Cloud put it, this collaboration has been building for years and years across tons of different products. And they say Intel's ecosystem support has been absolutely crucial for them to squeeze out every last drop of performance.
Now, here's the really clever part. Alibaba develops their own custom chip called a CPU. Its whole job is to handle all the boring but totally necessary background stuff. Networking, virtualization, all that. What that does is it offloads about 20 to 30% of the work from the main CPU, and that frees up the Xeon 6 to dedicate 100% of its massive power directly to what matters, running the customer's apps. And the results? The market response has been nothing short of explosive. Get this, they got over 10,000 customers on board in less than 100 days. To get to 20,000, it only took another 50 days after that. So why was it so fast? Well, because it's all built on the same architecture they already use. Moving over for existing customers is completely seamless. No headaches. Okay, but this is where the story takes a really surprising turn. Because usually when we talk about AI, we're talking about GPUs, right? That's NVIDIA's turf. But Intel's new CPU is actually carving out a huge and really critical role for itself in the world of AI. So here's the key thing you gotta understand. AI isn't just one thing. There's training these huge models, which takes forever and is what GPUs are famous for. But then there's the much, much bigger part of the market, which is called AI inference. That's actually using the models to do stuff, like answer your question or spot a fraudulent transaction. And for a lot of those jobs, a super expensive, power-hungry GPU is just overkill. A really powerful CPU, especially one with built-in accelerators, can be a way smarter and much more cost-effective choice. And the proof is in the numbers, which are just staggering. Let's take Ant Group's Financial AI. They switched their risk control models over to run on these new Xeon 6P cores. The result? They got a 2.3 times performance boost, while cutting their costs by an incredible 72%. Now, for a business that operates at that kind of scale, that's not just a nice little improvement. That is a fundamental change to the entire economics of their business. And what this really shows is that in this new age of AI, the CPU's role isn't getting smaller, it's actually becoming more critical than ever. And I love how the expert from Alibaba Cloud put it. The CPU and GPU aren't enemies. They're a truly perfect combination, with each one playing to its own unique strengths. Okay, so at this point you might be thinking, all right, this is all cool tech, but I'm never going to buy a 128-core server chip. How does any of this actually affect me? Well, the thing is, the technology that gets forged in the fire of this brutal data center competition, it eventually trickles down and finds its way into all of our hands. I mean, the whole idea of having both efficient and powerful cores in the smartphone that's in your pocket right now, that concept was perfected right here in the data center. The AI that magically sorts your photos or understands what you're saying to your voice assistant, guess what? It was trained and deployed on servers just like these. So when you look at the big picture, whether it's that handshake between rivals like Intel and NVIDIA, or that deep, decade-plus synergy between Intel and Alibaba, it all seems to point to a new reality. Maybe the biggest leaps forward aren't going to come from one single company's lone genius anymore. Maybe they come from an entire ecosystem working together. And it really makes you wonder, is this the new blueprint for how we make progress?